Okay, so our first story time is with a fellow UIC student who is studying computer science, Anthony Beltran, and he's almost done. He's graduating this spring and will be moving on to a full time software engineering role at Google. He has a lot of interesting things to chat about because he's been through kind of like every stage of the process. He started off at Google doing the STEP program, which is like an early internship that you can get kind of before you're completely like through all of the data structures. You can get it a little early, and then through that position he then got the full suite internship and then the full-time role, so he's kind of experienced all of them, which is really unique. um, he wanted me to tell you because we recorded this, and he said that he forgot to say that he was rejected the first time he applied for the STEP internship and that he got it the second time he applied, and that was really important to him that I mentioned that. Um, and he said that he really wished, we were just chatting after I recorded, really wished that he had been able to have more practice with oral exams as a student, because they would have been really helpful for him for that first interview. And he obviously applied very early because he still had time for the next time of a STEP internship. So he applied his freshman year, which is also really unique. But Anthony has lots of great things to say. It's really fun to talk to him because I actually first met him when we were at Google the same summer. And so me and Professor Bello were there together for a faculty in residence program that we did one summer, and we met up with anyone at UIC who was at Google, which was Anthony and one other student. Anthony was in a different office though, so we were only able to connect with him over email, but we connected, and then it was fun to talk to him again after this, and I couldn't even remember exactly where I had remembered him from. But anyway, he's going to tell you a little bit about his experiences, and I think it's a super interesting one to listen to. So enjoy. Okay, so we have now with us a fellow UIC student, Anthony Beltran, who's going to talk with us today about kind of some of his experiences and connecting some of what he's done with CS251. So Anthony, why don't we start off by introducing yourself a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. So as Shannon said, my name's Anthony. I'm currently a senior at UIC. I'm about to graduate next May, so like super excited about that. Super happy that I've accepted a full-time offer at Google based in the Chicago office. I've had 2 previous internship experiences there, so definitely was a company that I wanted to stay with.
Yeah, and so we're going to start off by you kind of taking yourself back to when you were a CS251 student, and like, can you talk us through a little bit what you were feeling after you finished the course? Like, where were you at?
Yeah, so I did 251 back in spring 2018, which is like a very long time ago. But I remember after passing the class, I was like super relieved just to be done with it. But at the same time, I still had like a few doubts on like a few data structures. So like graphs and trees, like at the time I didn't fully grasp them. But like afterwards, I was like, okay, I really need to sit down and like prepare for interviews. And I know these interviews are going to ask questions about a bunch of data structures. So I thought it was helpful to get familiar at least with like the basics again. And so that kind of led with my training, I guess, of like doing the leak code grind, answering practice problems that focused on each data structure to like fully understand when each data structure is applicable to a certain situation. And like as you practice more with these questions, you just kind of see a pattern with them. And it definitely helps you like in an interview situation where like you have an interviewing asking you questions and you have to like think of them on the spot, which is like super stressful. But I think just having that initial preparation is super helpful. Um, and I remember after it was during the same year, 2018. So I was applying for uh, internship positions, and my first one was actually with Google as a step intern. And I remember going into the interview like super nervous, just because it's like high stakes. Like I want to get an internship. Um, so having that background experience of just practicing these questions, I went in and a key thing that I remember from that experience was the interview was like, okay, like this is an interview where I'm questioning like your ability to work with these data structures, but I also want to see how you communicate. And I think one of the big keys of a successful interview is how you communicate your thought process to the interviewer, because they only have like 40 to 60 minutes to
Mm-hmm.
fully understand like how you work and how you solve problems, but they also want to see how you communicate your thought processes, because they're basically hiring you for a team and they want to see how you're going to work with that team. Because what
Mm-hmm.
I found out when I actually got the internship, which was like yay, was that I was never alone in working in my project. Like I had an advisor who was kind of guiding me through like the basic idea of the project, but there were always people that I could ask questions to whenever I was confused about something in particular. Um, so that was super helpful. So a big key takeaway is communication, like express your thoughts, express how you're thinking about a problem and like your basic ideas of how to initially approach it. And of course, your data structure knowledge is going to come into play when you say like, oh, maybe maybe a map will be helpful to solve this specific problem.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the internships go, what, or sorry, the interviews go, what kind of did you notice as like types of questions that you received, doing the step internship interview versus like what you might see in a SWE internship
Yeah.
interview versus a full time?
So with my step interview, generally those questions will boil down to string, array, or linked list problems. You might have like a spicy question asking about like queues or stacks. So those are definitely data structures you want to know the basic ideas of and how to work with them. For SWE, usually those tackle graphs and tree problems, but also another, I guess, big question that they usually have is one where you have a problem and you can give a brute force solution, which generally has a very bad runtime. So if the runtime is usually exponential, you know that you can reduce it to a faster runtime. And so the second part of that question will be like, okay, optimize your code to make it run faster. So generally, those are for SWE uh, interviews. And of course, you always want to talk through your thought process in any of those.
Mm-hmm. And those are almost always optimized with a hash map or a map.
Generally. Or sometimes I've had one interview question where the good solution was a hash map to a tree map.
Mm, yeah,
So those are going to be very rare, but
right.
it's just good to know like your possible data structures that you can use. And even if you don't fully know how to use them, maybe you can say like, hey, I'm thinking of using this data structure. Do you think this is a good idea? Because again, it boils down to communication.
Mm-hmm.
You want to express what you're thinking, and you can think that maybe this data structure will help you out. So
Yeah, definitely. So far you've worked on, I'm assuming, a couple different projects through your internships. And could you tell us about some of the data structures that you've actually gotten to use in real projects at Google?
yeah, so at my step internship, I had a general problem where I was given a list of rows in a table. And so I basically had to map the child rows to parent rows and then put this information in a table which was queryable. So I had to do fast lookups based on like a text input string that people gave in. And so the basic problem was like, okay, how do I map these child rows to parent rows? Like, what data structures can I put them in to make it as efficient as possible? And I think the basic idea was just use a map for that, have your parent rows mapped to the child rows. And yeah, it worked out in the end. And then there's like a few optimization things that I had to do here and there to make them as fast as possible.
Cool. And that was what kind of project was that for?
So
Like, what was
yeah,
the actual system?
so that was like an internal tool that was going to be used by actual engineers to look up information. It was kind of like a migration project because some languages get deprecated, and so they're no longer being supported. And so usually move on to a new language. And so I built this tool in the new language, Angular Dart, so that they can still have this internal tool that helped them look up information.
And where are you going to be moving to full time? What group are you going to be working in?
Yeah, so I'm going to be staying in Chicago on the search team. So right now, I really don't know what kind of projects I'll be working on, but I can assume they're going to be optimization problems. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a fun thing to tackle.
Yeah,
Make your
definitely.
Google queries a little bit faster,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Yeah. I actually did a couple projects as a student using the search algorithm
Mm.
that Google uses that they published, back before it was like even created, right? I forget what it's called right now, but it's really cool. So let's end with, do you just some maybe concluding advice for everyone?
Yeah, so you're definitely going to leave CS 251 with a bunch of information, and all of it's going to be applicable as you continue on in both your academic and professional career. Um, and like me, like you're not going to know it right off the bat. It definitely takes a lot of getting used to, and it takes a lot of practice. So like, as long as you continue like being curious on how different data structures work, you're you're set. Like
Yeah.
don't lose that curiosity.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Anthony, for coming by and chatting with everyone. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
The algorithm that I couldn't think of was MapReduce. So if any of you are curious what I was talking about, um, that's what it's called. Okay, thanks.